We're live right now, just running live. Everything, yeah. We got plenty of time. So we got.
Gee, I'm sorry. He just kept looking at us. I said,
7 minutes.
I said, by the way, I need a Redskins.
You have the agenda, right?
So he put true story. He put a Redskins cast on my wrist, and dumb crazy Rob Walker and I went up to see you remember Rob?
Hello, Commodore.
We went to see the game up in D.C. It was Redskins and Giants. So I have my Redskins cast.
Do you ever know Dr. Williamson over there in Virginia Beach?
I sure did.
Yeah, he's one I brought my back.
And that was Christine's husband, but they were divorced.
Yeah, then he married
Is
Donna.
that what it is?
Donna Brown.
Did I know?
No. No, she was.
They pronounce it S-hat.
That's one of my ex's.
Oh, okay.
Test 1 1 1.
Yeah, he was a nice.
He's a good guy. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, you have
But Don, what I was going to say about Don let me work part-time and I kept my jacket open.
Yeah.
I covered up the vest.
Oh, yeah.
One in the
But Don was when he got into that occult business though, I think that it was such a dangerous thing messing around in that spiritual world.
Yeah.
And he got how did he die?
A woman sued the hospital after a recent treatment. Her husband is lost interest in bed. The hospital in their defense stated.
It was a long time ago.
He shipped.
I think certainly before my time.
Nice you see.
Yeah. He even came by years later to see me. Yeah, and he's just a nice guy.
We're on the awkward side of the table. Sit still. You were in the brush.
Morning, Phil.
Good morning. How are you?
Fair to middle, like a good grade of cotton.
Well, good.
Whatever that means. Well, I know what it means, but nobody else does. Nobody cares.
Nobody else has heard it.
Nobody remembers cotton.
I know. I do. The only thing I wear.
The bad thing about cotton is you have to earn it.
I know.
And I love cotton.
With cotton, merino wool, cashmere, the only thing I really want next to my skin.
Plus it'll shrink.
Now the other side's touching.
If you buy it,
We need 2 people to hold up the flag for the pledge.
shrink one side.
So you just wash it.
Okay.
You don't like the flag.
I wanted to hang it, but
That's a good idea.
The other end.
Tommy Bahama, I have to buy it. Florida.
You got a dump at your house.
Thank you.
Well, you told us about Francis' closet. Closets here, closets there.
What did you do with that flag I gave you,
Tell Francis
Robert?
if she has any.
which flag?
The little one, the 3x5.
You don't have a truck. And you can't really
I know.
big enough.
Well, I asked Bill if he could get here early and ask you to help him hang it from the ceiling, but
Hi, Bill.
our
Bill
hooks are
Weldon
gone.
here. Yep.
Well, why don't we just have 2 people hold it up? How's
For
that?
my age, I guess
Okay.
I'm reasonably well.
You, which
3x5 flag.
was it? A regular American flag? It's in my. It must be in my duffel bag. I'll look for it. I have Kathleen McCarthy's Betsy Ross,
Oh, that's a good idea.
and I have.
Been here that long.
I just don't like seeing that flag
Yeah,
touch the ground.
yeah.
Too many veterans around here. I'm not even one of them.
Had any problem.
Well,
Hurt cats. Shit.
Yeah, they're long.
what's amazing about that is,
They
if
can get that under-
it accidentally touches the ground, I mean, it's not the end of the world. Now, if you try to burn it, well, actually, in that, you have the right to burn it, I guess, in some states or whatever.
That's what I
And those who believe in Judeo-Christian respect for the Bible, they burn Bibles all the time. Nobody ever gets upset by it for some reason, but that's...
Boy, she'd hear it too. She come. And she jumps back and lays there.
But these don't.
No, not real. It's not as social. She was.
It's a bigger show. Yeah, just take that brush. When is that? You don't like it.
I hit the spot. The picture was staged.
Yeah, you got to find it. Flush it. Do that. And you win some, you lose some.
The flag out. When I first got there, the flag was much smaller.
Good.
Took a picture of it.
Give me some of what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot who it was. They were taking the photographer.
Matter of fact, I delivered it to Francis.
It doesn't look right. There's a bigger flag, so they got a bigger flag.
Hey, George.
They did it like,
George Bryan.
I don't know how many times. I got that picture.
That's a name that I hadn't heard in a long time.
George Bryan.
No, not him. The George Bryan that I knew.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What was Cover's name? Remember Cover? From
Over, yeah,
Property
sure.
Evidence?
Yeah, my daughter
He was
Lisa
that-
was good friends with his daughter.
Hey, George,
Hey, George, you sit here?
Automatic.
it's getting there. I started my outpatient surgery. I mean,
His son, you know, he's
stuff now.
Yeah,
chief.
Yeah, so that's...
Fire chief.
that's helping.
They were
Yes,
at,
it is.
Lori.
And so, man, I just want to get it over with. The swelling's the biggest thing right now.
Bill down.
And if I can get that through, why don't you join us here?
Are you driving yet?
I'm driving. I haven't got the permission, but I'm driving, yeah.
You should. I mean, it's been 6 weeks.
Yes, it has. Absolutely.
7, 8.
Yes, yeah, 6 weeks, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Bill and Steph was there.
It's
and he spoke,
Postal
and,
Grill.
a couple other people.
It's
you
an
recognize
expensive
from other
restaurant now.
parts of the state.
Which is better than having being a tire shop or
Good
something.
guys. And they had, but
Does the building.
Yes and no.
If you think it might rain later, then all you need is a air skate.
and Pat Davis has something on.
I can put that on the
I will be here. I will.
Okay.
I will try to be here.
I volunteering for that. And this is
That was actually on.
Hey, George, how you doing, everybody? I've been busy, and I was busy this morning. I
That's
was
the last building going
up
working
at
on
5 o'clock.
the
Oh,
last
it's
commercial building.
Working on that thing for Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Monday's the city committee meeting with the new chair.
What?
So, we are, so I spent last week working with Laura on her appeal. She got that filed on Thursday.
Oh, where is that? Is that the public or what? I'm not.
The state secretary.
Yeah, usually spend $100 a person.
That was a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of footnotes.
I've done it a couple of times and I learned my lesson.
Now I'm working on stuff.
It's a good pricing for me.
How to use Robert's rules to contain what they're trying to do on.
What time's city committee? 6?
7 o'clock.
So everybody get there.
I'm
gonna get there.
Well, first of all, they're trying to adopt a rule even before they adopt the agenda. So constrain how what people do during the meeting. That they can't do. Then they're trying to allow, that's the big thing. First of all, we don't think they have to require executive ordinance. Have to require by bylaw that says shall. We're trying to
The Republican Party has a history. That's
John, do you want to get breakfast? And she says, put in your order now because you're going to hit back up.
No, I don't know.
Of course, I don't know anything about it. Dennis.
Then,
Dennis.
oh, we were going to nominate
Dennis.
forced votes.
I don't know.
If we have a majority, we might just move to adjourn.
Ready?
Open, close.
I just priced out.
So they can't do anything until Laura appeal. By state central rule, anyone who
Saw that?
filed Thursday, they have to.
Saw that?
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to Tidewater Liberty Partners. Today is Saturday, June the 7th, 2025. And it's the day after D-Day.
D-Day, yep.
3 days after Midway.
4,471 men killed
4,471 men killed
on that
in that
Normandy.
brief
Yep.
period of time. Wow.
Just that invasion on the beach.
Oh, all at D-Day.
I think just on that beach invasion.
Yeah. Wow. So, that was a very long time ago for all of us.
81 years.
D-Day.
81 years.
There's very few of us alive who were conscious of it at the time of the actual D-Day invasion. Maybe some people, little kids might remember it. I don't know. If they're still alive.
Here, you're right.
It'd have to be well into their 90s, don't you think, to remember it?
Oh no. It'd all be
Robert,
gone.
do you remember it?
Robert was there.
Well, close to it. I was born in 40. So, yeah.
You know, are all of you Star Trek fans just like me and Diane? You remember
Doctor Who.
Scotty, the original, engineer? He's a Canadian, that guy. And all through his acting career, he managed to try to always hide, I think it's his left hand. He had his ring finger blown off by a bullet.
Really?
When he landed with the Canadians alongside the Americans on D-Day.
Wow.
And on that day, he lost one of his fingers. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
That got him off the beach.
That's right.
Anyway, and he's still alive. No, he's not still alive, but he lived on for many years. Anyway, that's a little aside. I'm trying my best to kill time, but you know, sooner or later we're going to have John Reid roll in from the Republican breakfast, and he's going to probably give us the same stump speech he's giving to the Republicans now. I don't know. He's maybe he'll mix it up a little bit. That would be good.
Bill, in the interim, though, we also have former city councilman John Moss, who has a...
Are we going to do the pledge?
Yeah, we're going to do that now. Then we'll get into it. Okay, let's go ahead and get
Did
the
you want
pledge.
to talk about John Moss?
No, we'll do it right after that.
Who is this guy John Moss anyway?
Yeah, who is this guy, John Moss? Okay.
Anyway, without
go?
any further shenanigans, I'd like to invite Kenny Golden to come and give us an invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you do that, Kenny? Thank you, sir.
He's coming.
Well, good morning, everyone. As Bill said, we have 2 days this week that we celebrated. And down at the ocean front, we had a celebration yesterday for the Battle of Midway. And we also talked about, of course, D-Day. But June the 4th, in 1942, which if you look at what happened to us, December the 7th, 1941, just a couple of months around, we had the Doolittle Raid, and then we won the Battle of Midway, which was a pivotal battle for all of us in World War II in the Pacific. And we were fortunate enough to win that battle. And then, of course, 2 years later, June the 6th, D-Day, we won a tremendous victory that started the downfall, finally, of the German Empire in Europe. So we're going to come today to talk about those prayer to thank people for what they did during that time frame. So please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Father, we come to you today with thanksgiving for our ancestors that served in these 2 great battles. June the 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway, where sailors and airmen sacrificed their lives to bring us to victory in a pivotal battle in World War II that could have been, and very easily could have been, a disaster except for the bravery and the tenacity of our pilots and our young sailors and airmen and Marines who fought at the Battle of Midway, and our Army pilots also who bombed the Japanese carriers as well. So it was an amazing effort by all of them, and thank you for them. And then for D-Day, where Americans, Canadians, and British joined together to invade Europe for the first time and start the downfall of Nazi Germany. We thank you for their sacrifice and their tenacity and their love of country that they gave their lives on that horrible, horrible day there on the beach at Midway, particularly Omaha Beach. We thank you for their sacrifice, and we ask you today to hold their families in your hands and let them know that we are all thankful, and we're thankful for your grace and your help in those two successful battles. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
No, in front of the podium.
And then said, I thought you were
Stand here.
I can do that.
Very good, thank you. So we're all very lucky today to have as our guest speaker the GOP candidate for Lieutenant Governor of the great Commonwealth of Virginia, and in the person of Mr. John Reid, who has an extensive credential list, starting, I believe, perhaps starting, in the Ronald Reagan White House, working as an intern when he was just maybe that I don't know. Anyway, so he's here today and has had a long history as a radio talk show host in Richmond, 10 years plus, I think.
Almost.
Okay. And that's quite a long stint to be on the radio in the morning. I guess you got used to waking up early.
I thought it would change, but I'm still waking up.
4 in the morning. Anyway, without further ado, please welcome our guest, Mr. John Reid.
Thank you very much. And I joked a little bit about this, but you know, my radio show is 4 hours every day. I assume you don't want to be here for 4 hours. So how much time do I have? About 10 minutes, and then I'll take some questions, 20 minutes?
15.
Anything is good for you.
Okay.
Anything, we'll work with.
Speak as long
And
as
this
you
is
feel like it. Yes.
being broadcast live and 2 Facebook Live.
Okay, good. So for everybody who's watching online,
Yes.
I'm appreciative of that too. Hopefully you're still in your pajamas here this morning, but I'm glad to be with you. My name is John Reid. I was born in Richmond. I'm a native Virginian. I grew up here in Virginia. I went to public schools from kindergarten through the 8th grade. I went to St. Christopher's in Richmond. Then my dad decided to make the dramatic choice to run for political office in Henrico County, where we were from. And I said, I cannot be the son of the politician. I got to get the heck out of here. So I went to Baylor University in Waco, Texas. Maybe you've heard of Waco, right? You either heard about the Branch Davidians or Chip and Joanna Gaines. And occasionally Baylor football is good enough where everybody pays attention. But I was there for a number of years. I started out in journalism and then switched over to political science while I was there with an interest in international relations. I worked for Tom Bliley in the Congress when the Republicans were in the minority. Tom Bliley was the former mayor of Richmond. I don't even think he was a Republican at the time, but he was one of the last conservative mayors of Richmond before everything went crazy. While I was working in Washington, this is the summer of 1992, and George H.W. Bush was the president. I met some folks from California who knew I was interested in television, and they said, oh, you should go work for Ronald Reagan. And I thought, well, you know, people always give me an upgrade to the White House. It was after the presidency. So I wasn't Secretary of State. I never want to overstate my credentials, but it was still great. I went to Los Angeles, and I lived in Los Angeles, and I was the last press assistant to President Reagan before he retired. So I traveled around the United States with the president, with Mrs. Reagan. I went to, I drafted the first draft of a lot of his remarks and editorials, New York Times and Washington Post, and he was still very active. And just as a little aside, and I don't mean this to be rude, but he was 82 years old when I worked for him, and he was living in LA. He was out of the White House after 2 terms. He was more with it then than Joe Biden was, in my opinion, when he was in the White House. And that's one reason why when I was on the radio, I was very harsh, because I know, and you probably lived through this, you remember how they mocked and ridiculed President Reagan and said he was stupid and he had Alzheimer's. And then they give Joe Biden a complete pass for 4 years, and now they're trying to save their own butts by admitting what we already knew. And those of us who called it out were vilified when Joe Biden was in office. And I do think this isn't a little issue. It's one of the topics I talk about as a candidate. You have to have faith and trust in the people who are in office. And I get really sick and tired of people who present themselves as Mr. Perfect or Ms. Perfect, and you know that what they're saying isn't what they really believe. It's been focus tested and written by some 30-year-old consultant instead of what they really believe, if they believe anything. And you know that what's happening is not right, but they're fronting it, and then they gaslight you, and then when you figure out and they admit what they did was wrong, you're the bad guy, like the Joe Biden situation. I mean, for years, I've been saying, hey, respectfully, I don't think Joe Biden knows what's going on here. And I know what that means. It means the staff is running the White House and the country. That's not what we were looking for. I didn't vote for him anyway, but that's not the way this should go. And anybody with any standards, both professional, political, and personal, would say that that was unacceptable and would have stepped aside. That didn't happen. And that reveals a deep-seated character flaw in one of our political parties. Neither is perfect, but that is a huge flaw that has been revealed in the Democrat Party. I think there have been several things that have demonstrated that their commitment to honesty and integrity, even if we disagree with them, that commitment has long disappeared. That's a problem. And it's one of the reasons that motivated me to leave the radio station to jump into this race. Is I was looking around saying, why am I sitting on the sidelines while these other people are making decisions? Why am I allowing people who have a lot of money, who are just kind of buying their way through this? I don't have a lot of money, but I got a lot of fight. And I've studied these issues, and I'm a good listener too. So as I'm traveling around the state, I'm getting an opportunity to speak to a lot of people, but I'm also talking and listening to a lot of people to find out what's on their mind. I'll talk a little bit about the issues that I think are important. But after 10 years at WRIC, the ABC TV station in Richmond, where I was the investigative reporter and one of the anchors at that TV station, George Allen called me. He was in the U.S. Senate at the time. He was looking for a Virginian who understood the Commonwealth and media. I took the job as communications director. It was not easy. It was rough. The Democrats were after him. They thought he was going to be the big challenger against Hillary Clinton. And so they were throwing everything they could at him, attacking him, trying to humiliate and destroy him. And it was hand-to-hand combat almost in a political sense. Sound familiar with what we're dealing with today? When the senator was not reelected, I left and went to go work for the United States Chamber of Commerce in Washington as the head of editorial communications. I edited their magazine and traveled around the country and worked with CEOs of the biggest companies in the country and the smallest startup, mom and pop, like laundromats. And I started to see some patterns as to what business people care about if they're actually going to invest money in a community. And that's informed some of the decisions and some of the issues I'm going to talk about in this campaign. Then I left and went to a public relations, government relations firm. I kind of joke that made me the partner in charge of international development. I thought, oh, I'll have a fancy apartment in London or Paris. Instead, they sent me to Kuwait in the middle of the summer during the Arab Spring. It was a very eye-opening experience. But again, if you believe that God puts you where you need to be at any given moment, it opened my eyes to the culture of the Middle East and to the way other countries manage issues that we're dealing with here, in many ways very ineffectively. I thought it was, I look back on it, it was a difficult period of time living overseas. Occasionally it was interesting to go to Dubai, amazing city like that. But it revealed some cultural distinctions between the West and that part of the world, which is valuable as I evaluate situations now. And then I went to go work for the Iraq Afghanistan Veterans of America as the chief of communications for them, tried to advocate for the newest generation of veterans who, as it's been explained to me, and we spent a lot of time in the last 24 hours talking about D-Day and remembering the men from Bedford, the boys from Bedford, young men from Bedford in Virginia who were killed in the invasion of Normandy, and the others from around the country who sacrificed their lives to defeat a really perilous foe. I look at that and say, we have veterans today who don't get a decompression time. They come out of a theater of war and they arrive back at Andrews Air Force Base within 24, 36 hours, and we expect them just to pop in after the horrors of war and function like a normal civilian. It doesn't work that way, and I think that's why, one of the reasons why we've seen a dramatic increase in suicides. And I know in this community, with all of the vets here in Hampton Roads, that's something important. I want to tell you, we got $22 million, which DOGE has proven is nothing, right? Got $22 million to help improve mental health care at the Veterans Administration across the country. And the group that I worked with, and that was the project I was on when I was there, they're still trying to increase the funding for that mental health care, and I think that's really important. Then I went to the radio station, worked at Sirius XM Radio in New York for a little while. And, it was they gave me the late night show, so everybody was asleep on the East Coast, but I talked to truckers in Hawaii on their lunch break, which was interesting to get a different perspective from another part of the world. And then I went to WRVA, which is the big news talk Rush Limbaugh station of Richmond, and I was there for 8 years, standing up for conservative principles, fighting back against the people who were unfairly and very deceptively trying to bankrupt Donald Trump, abuse Donald Trump, incarcerate Donald Trump, kill Donald Trump. I mean, I'm not going to debate with people about Donald Trump's personality. I'm really not interested in that debate. I'm interested in policies and what's going to save the country. And that's why I voted for it 3 times. Because I looked at the situation and I said, I need somebody who's going to be aggressive, who will try to save the country from the crushing debt, which is almost impossible at this point, $36 trillion in debt, and maybe give us a chance to survive as a country for another decade. Maybe. I don't even think that's guaranteed with the type of leadership that we're getting, especially from the Democrats. And so, in 2020, a lot of people don't know this because the press didn't effectively cover. We know what happened in Seattle and Portland, right? The zones that were taken over by Antifa and BLM and the people who were raped and murdered and abused on the West Coast. What a lot of people don't know is you saw similar things happen in Richmond. A $250,000 public bus set on fire and burned in the middle of Broad Street, a few blocks from the Capitol. The Richmond police officers routinely pelted with balloons filled with feces and urine in their faces. Not one night. Bad things happen one night. I'm a really practical person. I know that something bad can happen, and you could be the best leader in the world, and you can't stop something bad from happening that you didn't anticipate was coming. But when it goes on night after night after night, week after week after week, and more people, innocent people are harmed, and more businesses are torpedoed, and more people are abused, and you don't do anything about it, that's a problem to me. And that's what the Democrats did to us in Virginia in 2020. And I'm not going to let anybody forget about it. Very easy for them to pretend that 2020 didn't happen or that they were reasonable. They were very unreasonable. Democrat Governor Ralph Northam had nothing to say as the state capital, my hometown, was on fire in 2020. Why is that? I think it's because it was politically beneficial to the Democrats at the time. That social upheaval benefited them politically. Every morning on the radio, I was the one person to call out that bad behavior. And you don't have to be someone with a PhD from Harvard to know that this was poor leadership. You could be a Boy Scout leader and you would know that this was poor leadership. The mayor of Richmond, LeVar Stoney, allowed the black city councilwoman and her 2 children to be harassed at their house night after night. People shooting laser beams, and these 2 little kids, terrified. Their mother chants outside the window. He'd protect her. His own city council person didn't do it. She's a black woman. Black Lives Matter? I don't think so. That's not what was going on in 2020. It was intimidation of the rightful citizens of the city of Richmond and the people of Virginia. All, I think, for political gain. When the statues came down on Monument Avenue, I know it's controversial. No, listen, I'm not interested in refighting the Civil War, but I am interested in making sure that an angry mob does not rule the city that I live in.
Amen.
You want to take a vote to take down a statue? Okay, we can do that. I'm not voting for it. And I'm going to stand up and speak against it because I actually have respect for my ancestors. And I study history with curiosity and not condemnation. I don't think it benefits me to be high and mighty and holier than thou now about people who've been dead for 160 years. How about I fix the problems that are right in front of me in this generation? But that's not what the Democrats wanted. They wanted to debate CRT, critical race theory, and DEI, and they used that angry mob attitude to tear down one of the top tourist attractions, if you want to talk about money, in the state of Virginia. And it sent a message to all of us who obey the law, who are angry as hell too, that we're going to be abused. And I'm not going to tolerate that. And it's one of the reasons I chose to run for lieutenant governor. You need to know that there's someone at the Capitol who has a clear understanding of the rule of law and right versus wrong. And that does not mean that everyone's going to agree with me, but it does mean that we all have to agree to obey the law. And that has been lost in Virginia and in the larger sense across the United States. Somebody's got to try to bring that back, and I'm going to do it. In 2021, the Democrats allowed people to lose their jobs, be forced out of work because they didn't take the mandated vaccine. I got a problem with that. I took the Johnson & Johnson shot because my mother has a degenerative lung disease. And I knew if she got COVID, it was over for her. She was not going to survive it. So we isolated her, as normal people did when you realize that senior citizens and those with chronic diseases or compromised immune systems were the ones who were really vulnerable. You isolated those people. It's unpleasant, not nice, but that's what we had to do. I mean, I was wiping off the groceries before they went into the house. A little crazy looking back on it, but that's what we did to try to protect her. Oh no, the Democrats in 2021 made a point of making sure that anyone who did not kneel before the government mandates would be punished. Now, I got a problem with that. You are free people. We are free citizens. We do not take orders from the government. We can get information and then make our own decisions about the way we're going to live our lives. And I think 2021 revealed a nefarious strain of thought that is growing in the United States, where we're supposed to be the subjects of government rather than the citizens who live in a free country. I'm going to stand up against that every chance I get. The final straw for me, because I started talking about running for lieutenant governor last year, and I went and talked to Winsome Sears, and I talked to Jason Yaris, and I talked to Governor Youngkin privately, didn't make a big deal out of it. Said, if you guys got a problem with this, you need to tell me now. I don't want to embarrass you or embarrass myself. If I'm not the kind of guy you're looking for, you need to tell me now. Nobody said anything, right? 2024. We talked the politics of it. I was thinking at around Christmas time, New Year's, I wouldn't run. Because I had this radio show, making good money. Not Tucker Carlson, Fox News money, but good money, right? And then I got home from a trip, and somebody called me and said, you're not going to believe what's happening in downtown Richmond. I'm like, what? There's a porta-toilet in front of the governor's mansion because there's no water. I drove down. I drove down to the Capitol. Like, there's no way. This is the capital city of Virginia. This is first world America. Oh, no. There was a porta-toilet in front of the governor's mansion. There were porta-toilets lined up behind the Capitol. The legislature had to leave. The hospitals in Richmond couldn't perform surgery because they had no water. The Marriott Hotel is bringing in big trucks so they can flush the toilets in the hotel. This is where we're headed with Democrat leadership. In Richmond City, you don't have to ask permission from me or any other Republican because it's all Democrat run. The prosecutor, the mayor, the city council, the administration, the school superintendent, all Democrats. My opinions are irrelevant in the city of Richmond. Your opinions don't matter in the city of Richmond. They should have the most perfect city in America. Since they run it, they set the tax rates, they've got money coming in, they run it. Why are we looking at a capital city now for the second time, and I got to check the headlines today about whether this is recurring, third time potentially where there's no water for the citizens of the city of Richmond. We're boiling water on our stoves, and that's if the water's even coming through the pipes. Do you want to know why it happened? Because we had a Democrat mayor named LeVar Stoney, who is probably the guy who's going to run against me for lieutenant governor. He may be the choice that the Democrats pick to run against me for lieutenant governor. He was in charge for 8 years, and instead of focusing on basic good management, making sure the potholes are filled, making sure the pipes and the pumps actually work, even when there's a notice that says the pipes and the pumps are not going to work much longer, he wanted to focus on the slave trail and the slave museum and beating up on the Confederacy and talking about critical race theory, attacking Glenn Youngkin, even when Glenn Youngkin was trying to help him, attacking every Republican. Now that's bad leadership, and it should be a disqualifier for someone to move on, certainly to be the lieutenant governor, and we all know he wants to be governor. He didn't want to be lieutenant governor. He just got shoved out by Abigail Spanberger, and so he's waiting his turn. And that's a problem. So when I got back and saw that we couldn't have drinking water in my hometown, that did it for me. Like, I'm out of the radio station. I had to leave because you can't be active duty military or on air at an FCC regulated radio or TV station. So I had to leave the radio station. January 27th, my last broadcast. I finished the broadcast, went and opened the bank account for the campaign 2 hours later. And I've been campaigning ever since. And the reason is that everything is on the line here in Virginia. Everything. You got Donald Trump trying to save us in D.C., trying. I don't know what's going to happen. But whatever he does or does not do, Virginia, on July 1st, it's the countdown 1 year to new laws taking effect in Virginia. So if Abigail Spanberger is the governor and not Winsome Sears, we're going to lose your right to work. Count on it. Count on it. You will be forced to join a union. Your kids will be forced to join a union. Your grandkids will be forced to join a union. Not an option anymore. If they want to have a job, that's what they got to do. Money will come out of their paycheck, and it will be given to the union bosses, who will then give it to the Democrat Party to stomp on everything you believe in. The minimum wage will probably go up, which sounds good unless you're actually literate in economics. One of the guys who's running for lieutenant governor said he wants a $20 minimum wage in Virginia. So, you know, if you're the guy who pops the popcorn at the movie theater and you are 16 years old, you probably like that idea because you don't realize you're the first one who's not going to have a job if we have a $20 minimum wage. And it's a $20 minimum wage in Fairfax, where they got a lot of money. It's a $20 minimum wage in Virginia Beach, and it's a $20 minimum wage in Abington and Bristol and Damascus, where they're struggling to hold businesses. And guess where those businesses are going to go? Across the state line to Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia is going to be in trouble. Some of you remember Ross Perot and the giant sucking sound that he talked about in 1992. That's going to happen here. I hate to admit it, he was right then and he's right now. We're going to lose our advantage in recruitment of jobs and businesses. The ones that Glenn Youngkin has been successful recruiting, George Allen, Jim Gilmore, Bob McDonnell, all the things that Republican governors have been able to bring to the state. You know why? Because they've been able to say, you'll have a stable workforce. You won't be at the mercy of the unions. And as long as Tennessee can say, come to us, as long as the Carolinas can say, come to us, as long as Texas and Florida can say, come to us, and quite frankly, they got a better tax situation than we do, with no income tax in some of those places, we're going to get our butts kicked if we let the Democrats win. So, everything is on the line. There are a lot of people who are in great, and it's not unusual at this point in an election. You know, I'm the nominee, and there were 2.5 people essentially running. One of them didn't get the signatures. The other gentleman was a member of the Fairfax Board of Supervisors, had a heart problem, had to drop out. So you're stuck with me. I think I'm a pretty good choice, to be honest with you. And I'm going to sell the things that I bring to you. But I'm aware that you didn't get the normal vote that you would get. And so I'm not taking the time off that some people, oh, John, you've got the nomination. You should take time off. Oh, heck no. I'm going around to every group, large or small, that I can possibly speak to so that you can meet me in person, hear from me in person, not some TV reporter cutting up the sound bites, ask questions, and feel good that I'm the conservative voice that will stand up for you and fight for you at the Capitol going forward, and you'll feel good about voting for me. And one of the issues that's been discussed, if you've been following the headlines, is the marriage issue. The Supreme Court's already made the decision, but we want to debate it here in Virginia. And the Democrats have put forth 3 amendments to the Constitution. One of them is the marriage amendment. And everybody thinks they've got me. Oh, what are you going to do on that, John? Easy for me. I'm not voting for a Democrat marriage amendment, and here's why. It doesn't protect religious liberty. And you don't have to agree with me. How many times do you hear a politician say that? You don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you. I'm not running to be the pastor of your church. That'd be a different story, wouldn't it? I'm running to be the lieutenant governor of Virginia. And that means that I have to be mature enough as a man and as a political leader and as a governmental leader to protect the rights of people, whether I agree with them or not, or whether they agree with me or not. And so, no, I'm not voting for anything that doesn't protect the rights of religious leaders who do not want to support gay marriage. It's okay. I mean, it hurts my feelings a little bit, but that's all right. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. It's okay. I don't expect everybody to fall in line with the way I live my life or who I am or my individual beliefs. I expect political leaders to stand up for everybody's rights. And that's why this summer I'm taking a tour of the state called the Freedom Tour, because I think our winning message is to talk about freedom for people in this state. We're never all going to agree. Listen, my dad, I voted for him 9 times. I didn't agree with him on everything. You should have come to our family dinners on Sunday. We argued like crazy over some of his votes. So if I can't agree with my own father when he was an elected official, I don't expect everybody in this room to say, yeah, John, I'm 100% with you. If you are, there's probably something wrong with you or me. So I'm going to go out and try to protect your rights. I'm going to try to stand up against the things that I think are wrong. The abortion amendment, you know, I'm pro-life. All the consultants don't ever say that. Don't ever say that. No, I'm not going to. Why would I lie?
Yeah.
To you or to Democrats? I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to hide my beliefs. I'm going to tell you, I know I'm probably in the minority in Virginia. I think that's, and I'm sad about that. I don't like that, but that's probably the truth. The mistake that the Democrats have made with this abortion amendment is that it is extreme. This allows day of birth abortion with one doctor signing off. And guess who that is? The abortionist. For any reason. Now that's extreme. We all know that's extreme. Even Roe v. Wade, that wasn't the deal. This is the most extreme recalibration on the abortion issue in the United States, right here in Virginia. These Democrats have decided that that's what they want to go with. They are arrogant, and they are ready to stomp on what you believe in. And that's one reason why I have been traveling the state saying that it is not unusual to have problems with different nominees. Oh, Winsome voted this way. Jason hasn't helped me with this. John is this kind. I don't like that. You know what? We all need to be mature enough to recognize that the only way that we stop a political apocalypse from happening in Virginia is that we unite now through November to make sure that we win. I think we're right. I think we're responsible. I think we're decent. I think we care about other citizens. You know, everybody says, oh, all the Republicans are racist and homophobic and xenophobic. I don't think that's true. I think we have standards, and we're trying to elevate the society to those standards. I respect that. But if we do not unite, if people throw their hands up and say, this person upsets me, or this has been said, we're going to look up on July 1st of 2026 when the new laws come in, and you're not going to recognize this state. So I am hopeful that as I travel the Commonwealth and meet with people and get an opportunity to share the things that I believe in and tell you a little bit about me being a loyal Republican and not somebody who just showed up on the scene who had an ego said, hey, let me run for public office. Quite frankly, it hadn't been a very wonderful experience. It's been pretty horrible, to be honest with you. This is not, this is not a coronation and hey, we love you, John situation. It has not been. I'm fighting for myself, and I hope that proves that I will fight for you going forward, and that you will feel confident as we head towards November that I'm somebody you can count on. Not agree with 100% of the time, but that you can count on to do the right thing when push comes to shove. And that is why I appreciated the invitation to come and visit with you this morning, and that's why I'm here, and I thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you want to ask questions, that's great. And I joke with people that I'm better than Karine Jean-Pierre when she was in the White House. You can ask me whatever you want. I'll do my best. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to thank you for standing.
Wait, hold on.
Thank you.
I want to make sure the folks at home can hear. Okay.
All the way up.
On, but
There you go. Yes, sir.
John, thank you so much for running, and thank you for standing strong through the midst of adversity. I just heard you say something concerning about the uniting part, which I totally 100% agree with you. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I want to get your take on the United Front things that happen locally. There's a lot of things that happen locally that kind of turn people away, give them a disdain because of how local units behave like Democrats in due elections. In fair and free elections that were decided. How do you get those individuals on board? What do you say to those people that are trying President Trump went through illegal lawfare, and they do it locally and they do it under the Republican banner. just as a personal note, it is one of those kinds of situations whereby someone has to say things at the some people, and I would consider you at the top. Some people have to make those statements and have to really kind of do unifying. How do you unify those people? Because a lot of it is not all about Winsome and Jason's votes, and Winsome's not being embracing of Trump, but there are things that happen that you all might not see.
Yeah.
So, and then, or
tell me about it.
Yeah. Or the things that you hear about. So, what do you say to those individuals? How do you unify those of us at the local and district levels from stopping targeted warfare against their political opponents?
Well, I'm aware of some of the things that have happened down here, and my dad was the chairman of the 3rd Congressional District, Republican GOP chair. By the way, my next door neighbor was the head of the Democrat Party of Virginia at the time, so we had to learn to get along in the neighborhood, which was not always easy. And there was the instruction plan for conventions, and people, look, this stuff is not easy on the local level, and there's always kind of a maybe not a rivalry, but there's a built-in animosity and hostility that builds over years, and people want to go different ways, and people want to be leaders. And I'm aware of some of that here, and I don't know that there's any way to fix that in the short term. One of the things that I have always counseled people in some of the other organizations that I've been in where things go awry or there are big differences of opinion is remind people that there's another election coming for another chairperson or another vice chair or another ratification of an issue or denunciation of an issue. There's always another opportunity to deal with that. And you have to put things in sequence. Just a little aside, one of the organizations that I run, I've been on the board, I was chair of it. I don't want to go into all the details because it's kind of ugly, but there were a bunch of people that would walk out the door right before we had a big event. A lot of money, a lot of reputation on the line, and I had to convince those people, look, let's get through this project where all of our reputations are on the line. If it's a failure, we're all going to be in trouble and look bad. And then when we get to the other side of it, we can start to fix that. And I'm not saying this to be flippant or disrespectful to the way the feelings that I think are inflamed in certain places, and Virginia Beach being one of them. But I do think that's the attitude we have to have until November. And then I think all of us have to take a step back and be sober about how we interact with each other, and how we handle those moments of disagreement, and commit to be fair with people. Like I'm really mad. Can I be honest with you? I'm mad about the way I have been treated. I'm very angry about it.
That's weird.
And we have a drink over here privately. I might tell you how mad I am. That doesn't help us win. So I acknowledge. I'm not going to be a liar to you. I'm mad, but I have to be politically mature enough to make sure that my speeches and my public presentations are about getting Winsome elected and Jason elected and me elected, and everybody all the way down to Dog Catcher, who's a Republican, elected, and we can deal with the other stuff later. Oh, and we will. But I'm having to wrestle with that myself, because I do feel like I've been wronged, and I do feel like there's some things that are not right. But litigating that at the moment probably is counterproductive to our ultimate goal. And I would like to invite everyone else to join me in putting that aside, and let's focus on winning. So far, not everybody else has been willing to do that, but I'm going to do it every speech, everywhere I go, because I think that's the only way we win going forward. And again, it doesn't mean we all agree on everything. It doesn't. But do we want to win? Do we want to save Virginia or not? That's the question.
Very good.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah. So I was the chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party for 9 years, now the communications chair, so taxes is one of the things that's really high on my list. And I would agree with you on collective bargaining because I'm from New York and we do not want to be New York. So clarifying to people how this is going to really ruin Virginia, I appreciate you
If you think
up.
the customer service is lousy now, wait till you get collective bargaining with public officials.
They think it's about workers' rights, but it's not. It's about control. So
thank you for validating that from New York. You're right. Yes, ma'am.
Exactly. But you're going to be the deciding vote on some of the stuff in the General Assembly in the Senate only, right? So we have taxes that are going up July 1, fuel taxes, right? So I'm hoping you're going to veto any tax increases.
That's my intention.
Thank you.
I don't want to see you paying $1 more, and I think the Republicans have to unite about that issue.
Well, you know that they want to keep the car tax, so
Yeah.
I mean, some people are working on getting rid of that, and that'll be very hard to get rid of.
Yeah. And Jim Gilmore, and I was Jim Gilmore's first driver when I had my learner's permit. We don't talk about that, but when he was running for Attorney General. Jim Gilmore won because he told Virginians he wanted to get rid of the car tax. And then he got stabbed in the back, quite frankly, by some of the Republicans who prevented that from happening. And in Henrico County, well, yesterday was the 6th, on the 5th was the day that our car tax was due. And I had to write my check. I've got 2 vehicles registered in my name. One's my mom's old car, and it's now mine. It doesn't run. And I still have to pay money for it. And I'm thinking, why am I going to get rid of that thing? But I haven't, I'm doing something else right now. I haven't had time. The car tax is the epitome of what's wrong with constant taxation of the citizenry. And it means, once again, it's the indication, like the canary in the coal mine, that you're not a free person. If you can't own your own vehicle without constantly having to pay tax on it till the day you finally give up and get rid of it, then you're not a free person. And I will go even further to say that what's happening with the property tax and real estate taxes is outrageous. Now, I'm going to sound like a Democrat here, but there are a lot of senior citizens who spent 30 plus years paying off their mortgage plus interest, and they finally retired, and now they're losing their homes because they can't pay the tax to the government. And that is wrong. That means you're never free. That means the government owns you and your property. And I got a problem with that. Most of the time it doesn't reveal itself. But I'm told that there are people who are going to the county courthouse, and there are people who are going to the city hall in Richmond especially, because, the minorities that Democrats claim they care so much about have even less flexibility in the extra money they have when they're retired. And they're losing their homes that the families lived in for 60, 70 years. Well, let me tell you, you're going to have a Republican at the Capitol in January trying to fix that problem for everybody. Not for rich white people or poor black people or poor Latinos or middle class families or whatever. For everybody. This is wrong. That this is the mindset of our current government.
I have 2 basic real concerns that concern me for a very long time.
Yes, sir.
One is public education and academic achievement. Nobody ever wants to talk about that because you certainly don't want to piss off the teachers. And the other is
they're already mad with
tort reform. The lawyers are absolutely out of control with frivolous lawsuits. There's absolutely no accountability for their conduct, no matter what they do. And we need some control of the lawyers. And I think some countries, like I believe Great Britain, they have tort reform. If you file a suit and you lose, you pay. Loser pays. And then we got to make these people accountable. The teachers have no accountability. The system is antiquated. It's not that they're bad people. It's just it's an antiquated system, and it's a systemic problem.
Yeah. Well, let me start with the education. I appreciate both of those concerns. My dad was assistant superintendent in Henrico and Chesterfield. He was a football coach and a teacher, and then was a principal of a middle school in Chesterfield County for years. My mother was a school teacher, public school teacher in Charlottesville. My grandmother was a school teacher in Greensville County. My grandfather, when he got out of World War II, out of the Navy, I think his first job was as principal in Suffolk, at the high school in Suffolk. So we're public school people. And so it hurts me. I don't like it. But I got to tell you, we got a problem with public education. Doesn't mean that every school is bad. You know, sometimes when I'm critical, I have a parent, oh, I love my school. I'm like, wonderful. That is awesome. I'm glad you love your school. I'm glad you love your principal. I'm glad you love your teacher. That doesn't change the fact that we've got a widespread problem in a lot of the public school spaces. And because I don't live in a bubble, I have friends who've been public school teachers for decades who have hit the eject button. And it isn't because of the salary. They knew what the salary was. It isn't because of, encroachment on summer vacation. It's because the kids beat them, sometimes physically, in the classroom.
Yeah.
And they're tired of it. Even men. They know they can't put their hands on the kids. There's nothing they can do. No, the parents don't respect the teachers. The principal is too scared to do anything. So they're in an impossible situation. So we're losing the good teachers right now. And I do think, and this is controversial, I think we've got to contemplate what are the 2 or 3 things we can do almost immediately to restore some semblance of basic discipline in the classroom. And one of them is school uniforms. Because right now, I've witnessed it. One reason I don't go speak to schools anymore. When I was at the TV and radio station, I stopped going because it wasn't worth it. The kids didn't seem interested. You couldn't do anything. They were disrespectful. It's like, it's not worth my time to come do this. There is this constant tug of war between the rich kids and the poor kids, and you're wearing this logo, and you're wearing this logo, and it turns into fights and conflicts. I don't truly get it, but that is the truth. And I think most teachers who are being honest with you will tell you that is a real problem. So that, to me, is something that we can fix and begin to send a signal, we're not doing it the way we have been doing it, and we are going to, your value as an individualism, whether you have purple hair and whether you wear expensive clothes and bling, it's whether you are smart enough to get an A on a test. Because that's what we're going to judge you on, not what you show up wearing. And your individuality can be expressed after school. But while you're in school, your individuality is going to be expressed by whether you can deliver the results academically and whether you're smart enough to be articulate. Have you ever talked to some folks overseas? I mean, there was a time when I was traveling, I was in England a lot, and I will tell you, I interacted with a lot of British people, and I thought, oh my God, they're so articulate. They have been trained to be thoughtful. I mean, you get a couple beers in people, they'll sound differently, but they've been trained to be thoughtful and very assertive about what they believe, and they can back it up. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have a problem in America, is we're no longer requiring that. There's a reason that we are accepting mobs in the street banging on tin pans, and there are people who have PhDs. I'm like, why did you bother to get a PhD if the best you could do is act like a third world person who can't speak the language of your country and can't put together a thought and try to persuade people? If the only thing you can do is bang on a pan and set something on fire, then that's a failed society. And that's what we're barreling towards right now. So the school uniforms is one thing. I just was at the Home Educators Convention in Richmond yesterday. And, 25 years ago, I probably would have looked at homeschool like, I don't know about homeschool. Now I look at homeschool and I think this is an opportunity for parents to be in charge of their own children, which the Democrats don't believe in. If you are looking at your public school and you feel like you need to make a change, you should be able to do that. You're not the subject of the government. You shouldn't have to petition the government to educate your own children. You shouldn't have to sign 10 pieces of paper and have a pastor say, oh, well, this is their sincere religious belief. Who is the government? Who is the lieutenant governor? Who is the governor? Who's the superintendent of public instruction to tell you anything about your religious beliefs or whether you should be teaching your kids. They're your kids. You own it. If they're a disaster, hey, that's on you. And I think there has been a fundamental shift in my lifetime to the idea that the government is going to decide all of these things, and you can come and kiss our ring, and then we'll tell you whether we're going to allow it. I don't buy that, and we've got to have a recalibration.
Thank you, John.
Tort reform, let's talk about it. Because, you know, there are not as many lawyers at the Capitol as there used to be, which is a good thing, I think. But there are a lot of social justice warriors who use the law to achieve what they can't win at the ballot box. And so it might even be worse that you don't have lawyers, because at least lawyers respect the law hypothetically. But let's talk about the tort reform, because I'm not disagreeing with you. Yes, sir.
John, Robert Dean.
Yes, sir.
I want to preface my questions I have with a friend of mine, former city council member we served together, John Moss, who retired after 42 years with Navy, Department of the Navy, oversaw a $22 billion budget and reworked city budgets every single year. It would be my suggestion to you that you have a conversation with John in all your proposals, such as the elimination of car tax to offset cut in spending. But it reminds me of the B-poll tax, the business professional occupation tax, which was initiated to pay for the War of 1812. And we're still carrying it, we're collecting the taxes today, which is insane. I guess my question is, when you're recommending, like Governor Youngkin has, cutting taxes, and then it flows down to the cities, it should go directly to the Virginia taxpayers, because when it gets to the cities, they stop, and then they take that money and they spend it as they see, which is just totally wrong. That's one thing. The Confederate statues agree with you 100%. VEA, they just need to go away, like the Department of Education. And then the other thing is, how do you feel about transgenders playing in the opposite sex sports and just destroying the women?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. If you had listened to my radio show for the last several years, I have been one of the most outspoken people against that before it became a big issue. Men should not be competing against women in sports. My sister played volleyball and basketball at Godwin High School in Henrico County. She got a partial scholarship on the crew team at Clemson University. You think her brother is going to allow the next generation of young female athletes to be brutalized or disenfranchised because we have somehow lost sight of truth? I mean, look, I'm a nice guy, and I certainly know what it's like to be treated poorly by people who don't like certain things about different people. I'm not out there trying to harm anyone or insult anyone or abuse anyone. But the truth is the truth. You are a male or you are a female. And I can work with your emotions if you acknowledge that they're your emotions. I try to come up with something that will be okay. But you're not going to get me to agree to a lie and to lie on your behalf and then disrupt the entire society to accommodate your fabrication. No, we will not do that. And the good thing about having me as a candidate is I have a unique standing to talk about this issue. And I say the same thing to you that I do to groups of gay citizens. I'm like, you're killing yourself with this. All the goodwill that has been built by talking about being a normal citizen, a responsible citizen, about not changing the standards for men and women in the military. Remember that whole debate? I remember it when Bill Clinton was president. You don't ask, don't tell, and everything. Why I couldn't join the Marines unless I wanted to lie, which I wasn't willing to do. We agreed you could serve, but there'd be no changes in the obligations you have, no standard changes. We're not going to cut you any slack. If your behavior doesn't match up directly to the behavior of everybody else, you're out. Now that was acceptable to me, and I think ultimately most citizens came along to believe that that was okay, but that's not what we're doing now. We're changing from normalcy to abnormalcy, culturally. And that's going to kill us as a society. Now, here's the conspiracy theorist in me. I think the Democrats know that. And I think that's why they're pushing this, because they want to undermine the fundamental pillars of a stable society. Why? And I've seen it in country after country. I've been to 113 countries around the world. And the ones where the socialists / communists have taken over have deliberately undermined the pillars that kept that society stable. And then they take the chaos and they swoop in and offer a solution, which is a bad solution, but everybody's so desperate, they grab for it. If you're hungry, you will take government handouts. If you can't find a job and you can't pay your bills, you will take government handouts. And then you know what? Once you take the government handouts, you're not going to fight. You're not going to fight. You're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Now you're in trouble. And we're well on our way towards that happening in the United States. And I want to stop it. And the trans issue, and can I just say something real briefly about the kids? There was a time in this society, when I was a child, where if you were the Baptist minister or you were the stripper, everybody agreed, let's agree, we're going to protect the innocence of children. You know? We're going to take care, we're going to try to protect that as long as possible. We're not going to let a 15-year-old make a decision in a moment of confusion that the 25-year-old then would say, why didn't someone stop me? That way, that's not crazy thinking. That was normal thinking and very reasonable. And we've lost that in the society. And unfortunately, can I be honest with you? A lot of Republicans are scared to say it. They're too worried about being called a racist or a homophobe or some nasty name. You can call me whatever the hell you want. I'm going to stand up for what I think is right. And if that upsets people, then that will just have to be the case. I'll try to be polite about it, but there are things that we need to push back on. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've been called to do this, because I'm tired of everybody else sitting around being quiet while bad things happen to good people.
Amen.
Hey, Bill, one thing, I'm sorry. We have the owner of this establishment, Mike Rabby, here, and this is his 40th year of being in business in this site.
Amazing.
And he's been a big proponent of the skill games, and that's been I don't know what Youngkin was thinking, but it's they have really helped the small businessman.
Yeah.
And so I would like for you, if you have the opportunity before you leave, to talk to Mike about it. He's totally informed about it. We had a gigantic town hall meeting here about the game. So if you could talk
I've talked
to
a lot of people about it. In fact, last week I had dinner. Didn't know we were going to wind up talking about this, but Alonzo was with me. We had dinner with some friends of ours who run a number of gas stations.
Right, absolutely.
And they have expressed how they're on the bubble financially about whether they can fully employ people, what the rate of employment will be, or compensation will be. And without the skill games, their assertion, and I trust the people that I know here, is that a lot of things are going to collapse on them. And I had a meeting last fall with some of the casino folks who are very against this, and it seems to me there's some way that we have to thread the needle. If we're going to have the lottery, if we're going to have casinos, if we made the decision we're going to have gambling in Virginia, which, quite frankly, I'm not thrilled about, but what can I do? That decision was made in the late 80s, and then it's just expanded. Then we got to figure out a way to make that fair, because to me it seems like it's unfair to shaft someone like Mike here with this establishment, or my friends who run the gas stations, favoring casinos, which in many cases the money goes out of state and it doesn't actually, they've got local employees. So there's got to be a way to fix this. And you know what's great? And I'm about to tell you, I'm about to make a pitch for money for my campaign. All these people are shafting me financially. And that's fine. Go ahead. Keep your money. Keep your money. Then I don't even have to think twice about saying exactly what I think.
Amen.
Keep your money. Stick it. Because I'm never going to be bought anyway, but it just makes it that much easier. If If someone has picked up the phone and said, don't give money to John Reid, cool. You know what? I'm going to work harder than anybody who's ever run for statewide office in Virginia. And I got to believe that in the end, connecting with voters, that's going to be more important than having $1 million in the bank.
Amen.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Having
you.
said that, if you want to give a donation.
Thank you, Mr. Reid, very much.
So please go to the website. It's johnreid4virginia.com. It'll tell you a little bit more about me and some of the positions maybe we didn't cover today. And I am on the, I hope there's no accident on the 64 getting back to Richmond, because I got to be back at 2.
Oh.
So when you excuse me,
Yep.
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or make you feel like I'm dissing you, but I got to get on the road. You know how that can be. So thank you so much for having me today. Really.
Thank you for coming. I just wanted to say one thing before you go, and that is, I think you're the first politician I've ever heard who said quite enthusiastically that he learned from travel abroad. You know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's common, but I really appreciate that. I lived abroad and it changed my life.
It does. It does. And
Navy Town knows.
I heard, I went to Havana, Cuba. Well, I should stay here. I went to Havana, Cuba, and all these people were like, oh my God, how come you're going to Havana, Cuba? Well, first of all, I did it legally, right? It was, at the time that I went, it was legal. I didn't go down to Cancun and hop on a secret flight, which is what a lot of people did. I went legally. But one of the reasons I went wasn't just to have rum on the beach. It was to see for myself what Havana looked like, because all I hear from these big leftists is, oh, Cuba is paradise. Cuba, they have the best medical system. Baloney. They couldn't even keep the lights on when I was there in the major national hotel. And so it gives me some standing as I travel to a lot of these countries that are presented as some sort of magic land that we can't appreciate because we're under the yoke of capitalism. It betrays the lie of what we've been told, and that has been very important for me to feel confident that I'm actually advocating. I'm not just reading it out of a book. I'm advocating for something I've seen that has worked in our country and in other countries, and I've seen what doesn't work too. So I appreciate you noticing that. There's a reason I share it, because I do think it matters. So thank you again for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
And your travel.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to be there. Oh, that's right. Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
John Morris.
I'll see you again soon.
All righty.
Okay, our next person I'd like to call on is John Moss. There's many things going on in the city of Virginia Beach right now that are really alarming. We have our police chief who's talking about implementing curfews, et cetera, and then we have this new program that just started after entertainment for children after dark in the parks up to 11 o'clock, free food, everything. I mean, this is out of control. And then down at the oceanfront, we have all these problems. And so I'm trying to understand why the city council said, oh, everything's wonderful. We have all of this. And I would like to ask Councilman Moss if he could comment on that, if he would.
Come on up, John. Thank you very much.
It's been pretty secretive.
Everybody's tall.
You know what they say? Tall people don't live as long.
No.
There's actually empirical studies to show as you go over 6 feet, actually, actuarially, the height of 5'9" and below actually live longer. There's whole issues about proportionally the major organs don't expand proportionate to the growth in height. It's just a long, it's an interesting medical journal reading. I read a little bit of everything. But I did watch the video. I didn't watch it live. I watched the video of the police chief, and we have an outstanding police chief and a police force. But what struck me, and this is what I really wanted to talk about, was when I left office in 2022, we had got the vacancy rates down to 40, which he acknowledged in his talk. And I'm thinking, well, and then he says the force is hurting, I think was his exact expression, and they now had 80 vacancies. And I'm thinking, well, I'm sure additional 40 vacancies didn't happen in a single pay period just before he spoke. So something between 2022 and 2025 has been happening. Now, the police chief is much too much of a professional to publicly air what he may or may not have shared with his boss and our city council, but I think what we're first owed is solving the problem is one thing, but what is the problem? We've got two problems here. One is what's causing the amount of vacancies. It sounds like it's a structural problem the way you communicated. So did we have, as Bill knows, we hired a lot of people in blocks with what academies, 50, or are we seeing block retirements? And that's just an unusual thing happening that's caused that over the last 3 years? Is it people that we get through recruiting, but within the first 5 years they say, this isn't for me, which often happens, and they get out? Happens in the Navy, as you know, people don't go on to be lieutenant commander, and that's to be expected, but has that increased? Are people leaving mid-career, which is a bad sign usually, people at the 10-year mark when they're leaving, and you got to be asking, why is that? So I think what we're owed is transparency as to how did we get from being 40 to doubling the vacancy rate. Is it because people don't want to be officers? Possibly. Is it because of the military? Not enough people have too many legal issues such that they don't qualify to be police officers, so the pool has shrunk. But I think we owed a lot of explanation about that issue. So one issue is, and I'm sure if it's short and they're working a lot of overtime, what do you get? You get fatigue. Fatigue of the force. It's like no one minds working overtime, but if overtime becomes the norm, you're redlining all the time, your family life suffers, you look for something else to do, because in the end, our families are important. So I think we're owed a lot more transparency as to what's the force structure and how we solve that. Secondly, is I think there's a quote by Benjamin Franklin, and I can't quote it, but to paraphrase it is, we shouldn't ever be asked to have to sacrifice our personal liberties for security.
Amen. Amen.
And so curfews of adults, voting adults, shouldn't be happening as a policy under any government in any place in America, in my personal opinion. So I think that should be off the table. Now, if you want to talk about young people at a certain time having to be, that's great. I mean, I understand all that. So I do think we need a lot of discussion about what the solutions are, but I do believe infringing on the liberties of law-abiding citizens is not the right answer. I don't care if Miami did it. I don't care if Turkey does it. I don't care who does it. It's just not the right answer to the problem. We shouldn't be asked to sacrifice that. It was nice to see that in a soft way, the people in Atlantic Avenue don't want curfews either. I don't know about the parking garages. I think that's worth a community discussion. But first and foremost, the council just adopted a budget in May. I didn't hear anyone talking in that whole thing about, maybe Diane heard it, I didn't hear it, that the police force was hurting. We had a retention problem. We had all these issues. So if we have one, I know where we readily have $15.2 million readily available to put towards this problem, and that is the slush fund that's called the mayor's trust fund, excuse me, I think that they call it, to give each council member $1.5 million to spend in their district. Well, there's $15.2 million we can immediately apply to what is the highest priority of government, was to secure our liberty and our property. And since we have all these vacancies, sweep up those payroll dollars that we aren't going to spend and put them what? Towards public safety. And I mean police officers on the street, not overhead. We don't need to be treating every quote-unquote public safety the same, because it's the people that are out there on the street delivering and putting themselves in harm's way need to be supported, and just paying them overtime when they never have time to be with their families is not the answer. But we need a solution. We're not gonna fix that vacancy problem for the summer, another police chief. But how did we get here and it wasn't vetted during this whole budget process? Did they hide it? I hope not. But something here isn't right. You know, we're not getting the full picture, and I think that's what we should be demanding of our council members is tell us how we got from 40 to 80. Get into the details. Get into and share with us, because that's how you're going to know whether or not you can solve it. And it isn't just a money issue, I'm sure. I'm sure it's not just a money issue. And I'll leave it at that and I'll answer a few questions.
John, we had a grandson who was a policeman in North Carolina for 10 years. He liked the work. But they were no longer backed by the administration.
That's how it works.
They got kicked, they got punched in the eye, they got spit on, and if it ever came down to they had to pull the gun, they're probably the one going to jail. And that's why he quit. And I think that's got a lot to do with why these folks out here today don't want the job. Well, I mean, you know, they shouldn't have to put up with that.
I can't speak to the current climate or what is the culture in terms of how they'll be backed up per se, but I do know this community as a whole, and I do know when I served, I don't think any police officer didn't think that when they were taken to court that the city didn't pay their lawyer costs too, as well as the city's league, because we had a conflict of interest, and didn't advocate and never left them legally liable for their action, and they felt like they could do what they would do and that the city would back them up. Now, I do know that from practice over and over and over in the city. Now, whether or not in the day-to-day, I'll call it the non-lethality enforcement philosophy or the ocean front more specifically, that maybe people feel that they can't do what they need to do. I can't speak to that. That could be true. I just know that the community is fairly strong. We've done lots of stuff. But I can understand if we have a big city and if we're down to 80 officers and we surge to the ocean front, that comes at the expense, even if you're using people from the sheriff's department, which I think Rocky does a great job of trying to make that an interoperable force, that it gets old. And then some parts of our city get less coverage because we're trying to provide a presence. But I think what I heard the chief say, and specifically was covered, there was an incident where there was a shooting or a stabbing, I forget what it was, but there were 10 officers in the vicinity, but that didn't preclude the person. Well, that's true everywhere.
Hell yeah.
So the issue is we have a lot of people at the oceanfront. It's the largest single mileage width-wise of open space in Southampton roads, and it is a magnet. And I think we want it to be a magnet, right?
Yeah, we do.
So we want people coming down. Well, now the issue is maybe it's like Venice or some of these other places where it's so crowded they now have to restrict the volume of people that can be there, no matter whether they might have a gun or a knife or just a pure volume of people. And I heard the police chief saying that it's the density and the volume of people which makes it extremely difficult to secure safety. But now how do you go about doing that legally and making everyone equal? You can say, well, I raise the prices on garages. Does that mean only wealthy people can go to the oceanfront? I mean, I know what people do, and I know one of the big complaints is we have lots of people at the oceanfront and they're not spending money. So they would prefer that everyone who's down there have a gold card and a lot of cash in their pocket. But in our country, we really don't deny people access because they have lack of funds. So you have to sometimes be careful about the approaches that you take. But anyway, I think it is a community conversation, and that's what I heard the council wants to do, give them credit. But we still deserve an explanation of how we got to 40 to 80, and what's that plan for the long run to solve that. And with that, I'll yield to Bill Barnes, who's a former school board member and police officer.
Yeah. I can't address the shortage of manpower, but Lisa and I both agree, and it started a long time ago on Friday, Saturday nights, now I understand it's also Sunday, you have roving bands of young adults who are not on their best behavior, and the police have been told, don't do anything about it. That's the way it used to be, and a lot of profanity, and that's no longer a crime, no longer a ticket, and these roving bands of young gentlemen come into town from Virginia Beach and Hampton, all of Hampton Roads, Portsmouth, Norfolk, and coming down from Richmond. And because they're so afraid of not being politically correct, they're afraid to tell the truth. And that gets right back to city council.
Well, if that's true, that just needs to be out in the open. But I only would suggest a couple things. If you're going to have a curfew for people under 18, and it's going to be 8 o'clock like Pembroke Mall or whatever, then you have to make sure that you have the means what? When they're apprehended, where you're holding that until the parents come to get them. And, well, I mean, this is, I'm saying, looking forward, what you need to be thinking logistically, because something not enforced is not a deterrent. So you got to make sure you have the logistical capacity to execute what you put in place. Are you going to have nighttime judges at the ocean front, so you can, or what, you can administer and handle these things and adjudicate these things on the spot, so you have no delay between apprehension and adjudication? Maybe I don't know what the answers are, but I do know deterrence is effective when the consequences are most immediate. I know my good friend Kenny would agree with that, being a CO, is that's what works. So whatever we do, there has to be a short time distance between whatever the offense is and the consequence of the offense. But Rob, you have a question?
Yes, John. Segueing into the latest number I saw this morning that's out there is $74 million to develop Rudy Loop. What planet am I living on? Rudy Loop, $74 million. Central Park in New York? You don't have all this stuff. I mean, what's going on?
They have a parking garage.
Well, it's a little less if you don't. The bottom line is I've talked about that Rudy Loop.
I know, it's just.
But, and so I think, like I posted recently, anyone who has common sense and looks at all the issues that we have, people struggling to pay rent, people struggling to put food on the table, now struggling to find a job if they've been laid off, and you have $74 million that's debt service plus operation for a park. Well, what we just all agree that everyone says is the number one priority, public safety. So whatever that is out there that you've programmed for that's debt service. Well, we're at the resort for law enforcement. Use that tip fund and that money to pay for augmentation of public safety at the ocean front.
Absolutely.
So don't tell me you have a revenue problem. You have a priority problem, and that's a prime example. I often say it's like giving a drowning man a glass of water. We can solve this problem, but what's happening is shows you where their priorities are. And if they didn't know about this issue, about all the vacancies, and they hadn't been informed, then my good friend, and I love him dearly, the city manager, Patrick Duhaney, is an issue. But I suspect that's not the case. I suspect
City Council.
They know, and it gets in the way of the other things they want to spend money on, so it gets pushed down here. So that's what I think happens.
No, I just wanted to make
Are there
Come up
further
here.
questions to be asked of Mr. Moss?
Come on up front, Diana.
Any further questions for Mr. Moss? No?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. And now, for public comments, I'm asking you, if you're going to make a public comment, please come up to the podium.
I just wanted to invite everybody to our Tea Party meeting this Thursday night, June 12th at 7 p.m. at the Masonic Lodge, 2849 Princess Anne Road. And if you're running a campaign, running for office, or thinking about running for office, or just working on a campaign, that's what the topic is, how to run a winning campaign.
That sounds like an interesting evening. Thank you. Anyone else want to make any announcement? No? So in that case, we have nothing more to do but to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
So adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Comment moves, Robert seconds, and
All in favor?
I'd like
Aye.
to hear from everyone. Yes, aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any opposed? No. Okay. Nelson Clark is on.